Okay, how's it going? This is Aaron LeBauer from LeBauerConsulting.com. And today I've got a special guest. It's taken me a long time to secure the rights for his audio visual today. I've got Dr. Jarod Carter, who's a physical therapist in Austin, Texas, and he's a cash-based physical therapy blog um, author, ebook author, and podcast guru now. Um, welcome to welcome to the Hangout, Jarod. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I just tweeted out that I was having this interview with you. I'm excited about it, and you and I just finished our interview on the podcast, which we'll publish soon. So, and that went great for all the viewers out there. If you're seeing this before that comes out or after, make sure you check that out because Aaron gives us some great stuff on ranking our websites highly and a number of other topics. So
Awesome.
good to be here.
Well, to kind of further my intro to Jarod, um, uh, gosh, it's been about 4 years, and I had created some YouTube videos, and one of them was a foot massage sequence, and I was checking out my analytics and looking at my video, and there's a related video popped up by another physical therapist on bunions or fixing bunions, and I clicked on it, and it was Jared's video, and immediately I was like, oh my goodness, this guy's doing a lot of the same things I'm doing. And from that point on, we've kind of been been good colleagues, great colleagues. Jared's been really supportive, and I like to think that he's kind of like my PT brother from another mother. So yeah, I'm really excited to have him here. Jarod, I want you to introduce yourself a little bit. Tell us kind of your experience and a little bit about your practice. What makes your practice stand out, and how'd you get into physical therapy? I mean, that's a lot, but let's kind of
Right.
start that.
So maybe we'll go chronologically with the first part. I actually wanted to be a PT ever since I think it was ninth grade when I had started diving, springboard and platform diving. And my platform diving career didn't last long because I hurt my shoulder and stuck with springboard after that. But I had some PT at that point in time. And at the same time, my brother who lived in Australia was starting PT school there. And so I kind of got an exposure to the PT I was getting here, mostly exercise based. And I was talking to him about it. And he was like, well, aren't they using the hands? And that kind of introduced me to the idea that there was this manual side of physical therapy. And I'd always been really, I mean, since I was little, kind of the kid who gave the good massages, and so I always liked to use my hands to help people. And so when I realized that you could go into that and have both the exercise-based component of rehabilitation as well as the manual therapy component, I thought, all right, this is for me. And I never changed my mind once I kind of got my mind set on that around ninth grade, all the way through college. That was my path, and so I chose University of St. Augustine for two reasons. It was known to be one of the best, if not the best, kind of entry-level DBT program in terms of manual therapy, and you get all built into the curriculum. You get all the certification courses that that for their certification, for their manual therapy certification, and they're right by the beach. At least that campus is. So, and I love surfing, so I was like, this is perfect. So, went to University of St. Augustine, came out. Always was really big in all the jobs I had on finding good mentors, especially in the manual therapy realm. Worked in Austin for a year. Then I had a very, and that was an insurance-based clinic, and it was a good clinic. And then I had an interesting opportunity to travel with this couple as their private PT for a year. So that was really interesting, and I learned from the guy in that couple who was this amazing entrepreneur. I learned a ton about just entrepreneurship and business. And, half the time I was working on him, at least in terms of him on the treatment table, he was on the phone doing business. And so that was like business 101 for me as I'm working on him. So that was really neat. And then I came Came out of that, worked for a couple of the practices, both insurance-based and then a cash-based one. And at that point, I guess I was probably 4 years or so, 5 years, maybe 5 years out of PT school, and I knew it was time for me to do my own thing. And so to your question of what makes my practice stand out, and one thing for sure is that it's 100% cash-based. I made the decision to go in that direction after seeing the differences and similarities of both types of practices and having some exposure of how to make both work, and just also the trials and tribulations of practice owners who have to deal with insurance companies. And so went cash based from the start, worked my butt off, and filled my schedule pretty quickly, and it's been going great ever since. I spend a full hour with each patient, one-on-one. It's just me. I've actively not gone the direction of hiring staff so I could focus on some other businesses and building them along the way. But that's been really nice. Just to, I go in, I see 5 or 6 patients a day, an hour each. It's very relaxed. It's $150 a session. I take payment from them up front. I have a part-time assistant that's kind of virtual. She comes and picks up sheets and does the cleaning and filing and stuff. But pretty much everything else is done via email and phone. She helps me with scheduling. I have online scheduling set up. So it's a really low overhead model like yours is. And it's very relaxed, very nice. I don't have to really deal much at all with insurance companies. Occasionally I have to send them some stuff on behalf of a patient, but it's pretty rare. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's just a really nice setup, and I'm excited that it's gone the way it has.
That's great. Congratulations. That's
Thanks.
like super awesome. And I mean, I wish that for everybody. Um,
Absolutely.
I want to go back to two different things that you had mentioned in your history. First one is the couple you traveled with. You said you learned a lot business. Like, what are the one or two things? Can you pick out something that you learned from him about running a business or being an entrepreneur?
So I'd answer the second one first, of being an
Mm,
entrepreneur. So in terms of, I'm always very careful about not revealing identities or anything, and it's not someone that necessarily people would know anyhow. But what I can say about him is that he's not been in one set business in his life. He's actually um, he's done a huge variety and stuff that seem completely unrelated in terms of a product or a service, and he's gone big with so many of them. I mean, really big. And so what I saw in him was that what set him apart was that he had the ability to foresee an opportunity before everyone else saw the opportunity, and get set up in a way that he was able to capitalize on the opportunity in a big way before others could even get onto the playing field.
hmm
And so I try to keep that in terms of when I'm talking to anyone about business, instilling that mindset of look for those opportunities that maybe others have not capitalized on. And I think in the physical therapy realm, those are huge. And as we move into wellness and even things like telehealth, there's just all this undiscovered terrain that we have opportunities in that we could be taking advantage of, and hopefully those watching this might start thinking in that direction. So I would say that having that mindset of looking for opportunities that others, trying to be first to bat and best at what you do, it was huge. And I saw that from him. Also, just a wealth generating mindset. I had come from, my mom raised us single for part of our, when I say us, my brother and I, for part of our young life. And we just never really had much more than what was going to get us to the next paycheck, so to
hmm
speak. It's not like we were super poor, but we're certainly not anywhere close to wealthy or had much of a surplus. So when you come up in that situation, it really, I mean, I'm glad that I had to work for what I've earned, but also it instills, I think, in a lot of cases, a mindset of just having enough is probably all you'll ever have. And so when you have that mindset, it's very difficult. I think it's really quite a block to generating wealth in your life. And not to say that financial wealth is the ultimate most important thing, but it does make things easier. And if you can remove the blocks to getting there, I do think that life can be a lot better. And so just being exposed to that couple and their lifestyle and their friends, and it's not like they were, super arrogant. They were actually incredibly humble. They were amazing people. They are amazing people. And what I saw was that they just didn't have this mindset, this kind of lacking mindset. They had a surplus mindset. They had the confidence that there'd always be plenty and more to go around. And they were extremely generous and gave a ton of their time and resources to those who didn't have as much as they did. So I think that just those two, the opportunity mindset and the kind of wealth attraction
Hmm.
mindset, those were huge things to have been exposed to early in my career.
Oh, that's great. I think one of the things that reminds me of is like if you're the smartest person in the room, you're not going to learn anything. Or, if you're trying to be an entrepreneur, you need to surround yourself with people that are more successful than you, or in business and for a lot of things, and it helps you learn a lot more than just the tangible how to run a business type of things. Are you
Right.
currently doing any masterminding or group setting or working with any mentors on business or therapy or anything else in your life?
I do meet monthly with a group in the marketing space in terms of marketing any type of business. Um, I've not, that's a good idea, actually, starting a mastermind of, kind of a physical therapy mastermind. And I've done, after going to certain continuing ed courses, manual therapy courses, people that live in your area, you get together and practice, for the
Hmm.
next few months, once every few weeks or something. I've done that, but an ongoing one, not at the moment. I guess, as you might have experienced, you kind of, especially when you get into private practice, it's like those that you would collaborate around you are also kind of competitors. Even though I've found that I've become good friends with some of my competitors, I think
Right.
it's a lot easier. It's a lot nicer that way, actually. But so on the marketing side of things, yes, I do meet monthly with a group. On the PT side, no. But I would like to add that that getting together in a small group is huge and very important, but you can constantly surround yourself with the most amazing mentors, you know, in the world, basically, by just having, a nice bookshelf full of books and, good biographies and things written by people that have done things like that you would like to do. So I would encourage everyone to become an avid reader of business related books, lifestyle books, philosophy, whatever kind of gets you going, and just make that a priority in your life.
Yeah. What are your top three books that have helped you with your practice or
Top
resources?
three books. Oh man.
Or can you think of one? Even one is good. I mean,
One that I also mention in my ebook is The Go Giver
uh-huh.
by Bob Berg. And I really like that one. There's a number. It's kind of an anecdotal kind of. It's a story that ties in a number of key principles to creating a good business. And one of them that I've always remembered and I repeated a lot is always strive to give more in value than you ask in compensation.
That's
And I
awesome.
think that is especially important in the cash-based business model and practices like ours because you're asking for a lot compared to your insurance-based competition in terms of an out-of-pocket fee. And so if you're not striving to provide more than what you're asking for in value, it's going to be hard to keep your schedule full.
Right. Right. So, there's like all these topics in my head I want to ask, like great questions, but
Sure, yeah, keep
tell
those.
me, okay, so just um, tell me, what do you do um, to provide superior, awesome value to your patients?
So there's a number of things. I guess the first thing that comes to mind is take the time to listen and really show the person you care and how you treat them and how you interact with them, how you speak with them. I think that especially like when I worked in insurance-based practices and it really was kind of rushing from one to the next, it's so easy to just be like, okay, yeah, but what about this? And, just trying to get those data points that help guide your treatment. And instead of just like taking a breath and letting them tell their story, you want to get into treatment, but I think a part of the healing process and a part of like just people feeling emotionally taken care of, which is a huge part of what they take in terms of value from your services, is just being a good listener and asking those little questions that get them to dive into something you can tell that they care about. And that also goes for once you're done kind of talking about their pain or issue, but you got them on the table or they're doing their exercises and you're striking up conversations, making them feel good about the conversations they had when they were there, picking out the things that they find joy in their life and getting them talking about that. And these aren't like mental tricks. I just think
Hmm.
that, if you get people thinking in that mindset or put in that mindset and thinking about certain things, they're going to open up to you. And then the things that you suggest to them in terms of the stretches and exercises, the things that they should change in their lifestyle, that is going to have so much more impact. You're going to have a higher level of compliance, and ultimately, you're going to get better results that way. So, and that all just goes back to stopping for a second and not trying to rush to some physical result, but really listening to your patients and interacting with them in a certain way. That would be a huge thing, I think, that I could pass on today in terms of providing value, aside from just what you hear all the time of continuing education and improving your skills so that you can get better outcomes, right? I mean,
Right.
everyone knows that, right? And everyone should do that. I'm not saying it's not important. I just didn't want to repeat
Hmm.
the same thing we always hear. But that's kind of the big and first thing that come to mind.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other little ancillary things like that you can throw in there as well. But
Yeah,
that's, I think,
that's awesome to hear. I mean, there's some days where I'll spend, well, I won't spend, sit and listen to the patient just talk for 20 minutes because not a single other provider has allowed them the time and space to go through their whole story
hmm
of everything that's going on with them. And
right,
they're happy to have the opportunity for a professional to listen to their details.
right.
You know,
A lot of times you'll hear something that cues you into something that was a huge component that is a huge component of their total what you maybe call syndrome or issue
hmm.
that no one else has heard, and that is another reason why you might get a better outcome. Maybe there's actually a huge emotional component to what they're
Right.
dealing with, and and I don't take that on myself as being part of my scope of practice, but I have people I really trust that I can refer out to, and then I can skillfully try to figure out if they're going to be of the mindset to be open to maybe seeing someone to deal with the emotional side of this
Hmm.
pain they've been having for so long.
Right.
So, yeah, just listening, it opens a lot of doors.
Probably just the fact that you acknowledge it is worth their visit. It's
Yeah,
that's what gets
exactly.
them, to trust you.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Um, what do you do anything else like after the first visit, or outside of visits that you do to add value to what your patients are doing? Um, like, with your, with any, do you send your patients emails? Do you follow up with them? Do you, provide what other kinds of things do you provide them to take home with them that might be
Yeah.
valuable?
So, like you, I send a lot of people home with the small inflatable ball for
Awesome.
self treatment. I also I don't nickel and dime people. They're already paying a pretty high rate, so like, a lot of places you go and they want to charge for TheraBand and things like that, and most of the equipment, unless it's like something that costs me $20 or whatever, I just say, here you go, Merry Christmas,
Yeah.
and I think they appreciate that. So I like I know you do am really really big on making the patient independent with
Hmm.
their own self-care And I mean, there is kind of a time crunch pressure in terms of getting them done in as few sessions as possible when you're charging $150. So I let them know up front. I'm like, look, the more you can do on your own, the less you need to come see me, and I'm going to give you everything you need to that you can possibly reproduce on your own. We're not going to spend time here. You repeat, me counting reps. That's not what we do here. So
Right.
a lot of, I also, you got to keep in mind, what their schedule's like. And if they're ultra busy, you can't give them 20 things to do, but I send them home with a lot to do on their own. I definitely do follow-up emails, 3 to 6 months after they're done. Make sure I email, see how they're doing. Sometimes they'll end up rescheduling if anything's come back. I have a really great online booking system, Full Slate. You might link to
Hmm.
that. It's been great. I tried one other, it was a disaster, and this one, just all my patients just are ready. They're like, oh, it works so well. And it sends them those reminder emails, which decrease, issues with no shows or
Yeah.
cancellations. But it also sends out a great little birthday email. And
Oh, cool.
I didn't, it wasn't something I thought was going to make a big difference. Like, okay, cool. But I get so many people reply, they're like, thank you so much. That's awesome that you sent that. And so, I mean, I don't usually mention that it's automated, but I think, things like that make people feel good, and
Right.
just following up with them, 3, 6 months after, just to check in and make sure they're still doing well, is important as well.
Yeah. Great. Great. That's really great. I was going to ask. I saw that on your website. Is that where, I mean, the patients go and they click on it and they just kind of schedule and reschedule themselves and do everything
Yeah,
through that
so
portal?
I ended up getting a lot of my new patients will just that find me online. They never even call, which for
Uh,
me being busy, I mean, a lot of people want patients to call or have to call in case they need to do a little bit of selling to get them on the books, especially if they're cash-based practice. Since I'm staying busy and booked out, I hardly ever have an unfilled space unless it's like a late cancellation. I'm happy to kind of not have to get those calls or
yeah.
pay my assistant who I pay hourly to take them and interact in that way. If people are sold by what they see online or what they heard from a friend, I love it if they can just go to my website, click book, book now. It's very clear in the process that they will need a referral here in Texas.
Hmm.
It's also clear that only in certain circumstances can I see a Medicare beneficiary. So I've built all that into their system. But yeah, they can just book there. It sends an email, and then and whenever I see them after that point, I'll just book right after we finish a session. We'll set up, future sessions, and for each one of those, it emails them just a confirmation email,
Yeah.
and in that email, there's a link that they can always go back and click if they need to change the appointment, and that the reminder email that comes out the day before also has that link. If it's You can set the time, but if it's like less than 24 hours before the appointment, you can make it pop up and say you can't, you need to call to cancel. This is too soon, or what,
Right.
too close to the appointment. There's a lot of things you can do with the program that are really nice. Automate things, take a lot off of your plate.
That's awesome. Is that, do you know how much is that per month or per year? And
It's $30 a month,
okay.
worth every penny.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it, I guess it's web based where you just go in and you log in and set it up
Yeah,
yourself.
all web based, and then I can get on my phone. It's not an app, it's still a mobile version of theirs, but it works fine. You just log in on your phone, and so you can check and book appointments, and you can be at a networking event. I've done that before. If
Yeah.
someone's got some pain, we talk about it. I'm like, well, look, if you think you can get a referral pretty quickly, let's go ahead and put you on the books. Let's make this happen, and I'll just get my phone out and book them right there.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. That's awesome. Do you, it's interesting that you said it takes away some of that the phone conversations that maybe are, not time wasters isn't the right word, but where you pick up the phone and you almost immediately know, um, like I'll immediately know. I'm like, I can tell the first question this person's asked, that they're never coming in, and
Mhm.
yet they'll still spend 10 minutes on the phone with me, and um, it's I can see where that was a benefit. Is there like, do you know, like as soon as someone calls that they're not the right person? Do you have that experience?
Certainly, like you just mentioned, sometimes you do get that feeling pretty quickly. Um, and I try to get to the yes or the no pretty quickly.
Hmm.
Not I like, you want to be tactful and courteous, of course.
Right.
Um, but if the first question they have is, "Do you take my insurance?" Um, Actually, I recently changed the response to this slightly. I used to just say something like, "I don't directly bill any insurances, but I can provide you with the receipts that have the necessary codes for you to send in self-claims, most of my patients do."
Right.
And I did a podcast interview with Jerry Durham. You probably heard. We did a two-part interview, and I asked him that question of, because they've moved to completely out of network. They'll still bill for the patient, but they're not in network with
Hmm.
anyone. And and they've done a ton of he's all about the first phone conversation. He does one on the
Yeah.
call, and he has someone who answers the phone, and they've done a lot of testing of what works and what doesn't. I love it. I love talking to him about it. So I said, well, when someone's first question is, "What do you take my insurance?" Or I'm sorry, do you take Blue Cross Blue Shield, for instance? Their response is, we have a lot of patients who have Blue Cross Blue Shield, and then they kind of go on from that point. So I've added that in now. If they say, "Do you
Hmm.
take Blue Cross?" I'll say, "I have a lot of patients who have Blue Cross Blue Shield, but I don't directly bill any insurance uh, on behalf of my patients. However, I can give you the receipts that you can send in self claims, and that what that allows me to do, sir, is spend an entire hour one on one with you, as opposed to seeing multiple patients an hour."
Right.
And 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 right away, they're either going to seem very hesitant or just say, "Well, I have to use my insurance." In which case, I say, "Okay, where do you live, so I can give you some suggestions of great therapists in your area that
Hmm.
take insurance?" And I've got some insurance-based practices around me that just love me because you know, I'll send them a patient every month or two.
Yeah.
And so but they're either going to say, okay, if they're of that mindset that I'll pay more for a higher level service, if you just word it that way quite simply and say, "This allows me to spend a full hour one on one with each patient." If they've come from a word of mouth recommendation, they're already going to have a little more, kind of push to get in. If they've read your stuff online extensively and it's rung a bell with them, then they're going to have a little more push. If they've come from maybe a doctor, or someone who just said, "Go see them," or they didn't come in with this really strong desire to see you in the first place, and they're really all about using insurance, you can get to the no pretty quickly and
Hmm.
minimize the time that's going to take, and then
Right.
just refer them out and wish them the best. And I definitely do add with those, I say, "Listen, if you don't get the results that you're looking for, and you'd like to come in for some one-on-one time, please reach out to me, and I'll be glad to get started with you."
Oh, that's awesome. That's great. I like that. Yeah, um, it's really hard sometimes in trying to be a caring therapist. I don't want to turn people away right away. And one of the things that I'll try to find out like early on is I'll ask their name. I'll kind of ignore the insurance question. I'll ask their name and how did they hear about us. So even if they're asking about insurance, if their friend who's my patient sent them, or I read your testimonials, that gives me a clue as to what information they might have, or where they're
That's
coming
good.
from as well.
That's good. I like that. That's great.
Yeah.
I'm going to use that. I'm going to take that and use it.
Uh, Please do. It's my treat.
Thanks.
But
Thank you.
yeah, okay. The other thing I wanted to talk about is a little bit. I know one of the biggest fears that a lot of people have is, what if I live in a state without direct access? I don't think there are really many states that have real actual direct access in a way that we can treat patients without a referral. I think I'm lucky and I live in one, but most states have a lot of limited direct access. And
Hmm.
I know your state doesn't have direct access.
Yeah.
What do you
Now,
do? How do you get around that? How do you combat that? And what's your strategy?
so just for those out there that heard Aaron's statement and said, "Oh, but Texas is on the direct access list," and I think recently, I can't remember which state it was, but I think recently this announcement came out from the APTA, and I'm an APTA member, a proud member, but this announcement came out that all states now have direct access, and I mean, if you consider, okay, you can come and see me for evaluation, but I can't even tell you to ice your knee, because that's a suggestion of treatment. Um, then no, that's not direct access. I'm sorry. Texas is on the list, but we do not have direct access, in my opinion. We do not have direct access to physical therapy treatment, right? So we have to have a referral to begin treatment. Which, and I mean, I say this a lot. I lose thousands of dollars a year because of that. I mean, there are definitely times when, uh, you know, when I really needed to I could have filled a spot, like something opened up and someone calls that day and they're like, hey, little Johnny has an ankle sprain and a game in 2 days. Can he see you this evening? And I'm like, I've got this cancellation. I'm like, yes, if you can get a referral before this evening, we can. And they're like, oh, their orthopedist can't see him for 2 days. And I'm like, and for whatever reason, they don't want to go to, an urgent care center or whatever the case may be. They couldn't get the referral. And so that happens here and there enough where, it definitely pulls out of my bottom line. In general, it's not it's not as big a deal as most people would think it would be, but it is a bigger deal for cash-based practices because not always, but quite often, if you're in a cash-based practice, a higher percentage of your referrals are coming from non-physician sources. They're coming from the word of mouth from another patient, online sources, other health and wellness practitioners that might not be referring physicians, um, uh, personal trainers, massage therapists, that kind of thing. So, so in my case, with probably 95, 98% of my patients coming from non-physician referral sources, probably 50% or more call without already having a referral if they call, or they get to my booking page and like, oh, what is that? Why do I have to do that? So um, I give some guidance online about getting a referral. I have kind of a script I go through in terms of ways they can get referrals. Do you have anyone in your friend or family network who is an MD, a DO, a physician's assistant, an advanced nurse practitioner, a podiatrist, a dentist, or a chiropractor? you know so I go through this, think about this, anyone in your friend or family network, and I say even outside of the state of Texas, it can be any of those practitioners anywhere in the US,
Wow.
can tell me, who I have a doctorate, and I don't get into this, but now I'm on my soapbox,
Yeah. Soapbox
can tell me
preach.
that I'm okay to treat you, that it's okay, right? So, a lot of times people do have that friend from college that lives in Oklahoma, and they're like, yeah, let me give them a call. I actually have a patient right now whose friend from Oklahoma wrote their referral. So that's that's a start. And obviously it's like the first question is, have you seen anyone for this condition? If they've already seen a physician, that's the starting point.
Uh-huh.
If it's been 2 or 3 years since they've seen them for this pain, they're probably going to make them go back in. And I say, listen, if you can't go back in, do you have any friends or family, and blah 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 blah. Then if we strike out on both of those fronts, I say, a lot of my patients who are in your situation will just go through the urgent care, like a walk-in urgent care. Make sure you call ahead, because some of them are totally willing to write a PT referral and some of them are not. So call ahead and say, do you guys ever write physical therapy referrals? I need to get one in order to start treatment with the physical therapist that I found. And then, if they insist on seeing the orthopedist, they can't see him for 2 weeks. I say, there's really nothing that I can do other than give you these suggestions. Let's get you on the books for 3 weeks out, and we'll get started then. And so I try to not let the conversation end without getting them on the books, because then they have that impetus, even if it comes down to like, 2 days before they're like, oh, I never got that referral. I'll make a reminder in my calendar or with my assistant. I'll say, I want you to follow up 4 or 5 days ahead of time with this patient to make sure they got that referral.
Right.
So those are the kind of tactics and things that I've over time learned will work. And in most cases, I could probably get 85-90% of people will have no problem getting a referral, or it might be a little bit of a problem, but then, they become advocates when it's time to go to the Capitol,
Right.
to fight every other year. In Texas, legislature meets every other year, and I'm part of the Government Affairs Committee. So those are the ones that I get to call on to, sign the petitions and all that kind of stuff. So,
Yeah. Awesome.
anyways, it's
Yeah.
a headache, and it costs me money, but it is not an insurmountable hurdle. It is not, even for cash practices. So there's I wrote, and I'll give you the link to it. I wrote a blog post on that specific topic, and it talks about those talking points.
Okay.
So we'll make sure if you want to link that out, we can give that to
Yeah.
everyone watching.
Okay. Yeah, that's great. Awesome information, Jared. Thank you. That's, yeah, I mean, I'm sure that's going to help a bunch of people. And because even in places where I know it's, limited to 12 days or 5 visits, people are still operating under the mindset that I still have to have a physician's referral. And I can totally see that in a model where you end up seeing people for 6 weeks. If that's your paradigm, you go, well, how could I do anything in 5 visits or 10 visits? And I think like Florida is one of those states that has somewhat limited but yet open-ended, and there are other states that do. And um, I think the number one thing is to never turn away a patient who wants to come and see you, and
Right.
that's my thing. So um, let me talk about a little bit about ask you about you've written an ebook on cash-based practice and you have a podcast. So I want to check in with you about those. Like, so when did you decide, all right, I got to write an ebook, and what's in there, and what tell me a little bit about that. What you want to accomplish with that.
So it was about a year into my practice, and I had a patient on the table, and she said, so once Obamacare goes through, you're probably going to have to start taking insurance, right? And I was like, what? What do you mean? And she was like, well, if everyone's forced to buy insurance, aren't all practitioners going to be forced to accept it? And I was like, that's a very good question, you know? And it scared me enough to really start to research that topic. And I did a recent podcast on that, and I've written a few blog posts about that specific topic. But that was really what got me searching for answers. And in searching for those answers, as I was kind of reaching out to different conglomerate websites of a lot of PTs and just different PTs in different parts of the country, and my question was basically framed as, I have a 100% cash-based practice. I started a year ago. It's going awesome. I can't ever imagine taking insurance again. But then my patient asked me this question. I'm trying to figure out if there's any validity to it or a reason for me to worry. And the overwhelming response was, no, that flies in the face of free market capitalism. And as of now, and with this law, they can't do that. Now, as an aside, I wouldn't put it past the government to do anything, but I do truly think that there'd be such a backlash from both healthcare practitioners and their patients that I don't think that could ever be, I don't think it could ever be changed. Anyhow, I came out of that very confident that my business model was safe, but almost every one of them was like, how'd you do that?
Mhm.
What do you, in 1 year, and what do you do? And they had all these questions, and I was like, I looked online, and you didn't have your website yet. There were maybe like a few things that had happened years before with a few interviews, but there was really no one online providing any information about it. and the people that had done some stuff in the past, they weren't continuing to. They didn't have it was like stopped years before. So I said, well, I'm going to write a book about this and become a blogger on this topic, because this is big. This is important. As reimbursement rates continue to go down and Medicare is, like the 300-pound lady trying to balance on high heels, you
Right.
know, like that's not going to last. Things are going to change, and those who are completely reliant, my colleagues, and I am very passionate, if people can't tell, about physical therapy and my profession. And a lot of our colleagues are going to really be in trouble when the what really starts to hit the fan. So I said, I'm going to write a book about this. And as far as what's in the book, it's kind of like A to Z, everything I've learned along the way. Um,
Hmm.
the mistakes I've made, the things that worked, the things that the things that didn't. Um, I really got deeply into the internet-based marketing side of the practice. Networking was an enormous part of getting my schedule full early on. Reaching out to related, to personal trainers, acupuncturists, others, complementary fields, setting up those non-physician referral sources, and kind of the specific tactics that I'd use in those networking situations, online, on social media, just kind of everything, anything and everything that I learned. And I mean, and the book, I mean, I've been adding to it over time, and it's grown. I just kind of made the decision that I wasn't going to go hardcore on working on a second edition until after my wedding next April,
Hmm.
but I'm definitely going to set aside some time to continue to add to it. And so, but in its current form already, it's just packed with information, pretty much everything I learned from start to finish, from going from deciding to start my practice to having a full schedule and keeping it full.
Yeah. Awesome. Awesome. And then well, let me ask you this. Is there one secret that's in your ebook that you haven't blogged about or put up on your website? Is there something in there that you're holding off on, that you can share
Yeah,
with us? Or
I purposely do. I purposely don't give up everything, because the book is obviously for sale, and I
right.
do want those who buy the book to feel like they got something that they couldn't have done, just by scouring the website. The thing is that, and that's another thing, is that a lot of times, if you just have like a conglomerated piece of content that has it all right there from A to Z,
Yeah.
it's worth it to people, as opposed to like, okay, now I'm gonna go and read 100 blog posts, and
Right.
and
Right.
not
Right.
that they shouldn't, but like I think a lot of times people will buy it just for that reason. It's just like, here's the kind of blueprint A to Z,
Yeah.
in one place in chronological order, not just like, what did Jarod feel like writing about that week,
Right. Right. Right.
So
Well, I mean, I can see from
yeah.
the list of things on there, I'm like, he hasn't written about that yet. So,
Yeah.
um,
So there are specific tactics that I use in networking
mhm,
situations. I kind of keep my tactics somewhat global on the networking side of things
yeah.
in the blog. Um, there are some stuff in terms of blogging and social media marketing in there. Um, I have I have shared everything on the blog about Medicare, because that's the most commonly asked thing that I
Right.
get. And in fact, in the book, I wasn't completely done writing with the Medicare section, and when I was like waiting on all these answers from different professional organizations and lawyers and stuff. Um, and I was like, okay, I will make sure I get these set answers. There's a lot of gray areas no matter what, but I'll get that up on the blog, and then I link to it in the book. But um, so anyhow, in terms of, off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember the things. I've been doing it for 4 years now,
Yeah.
so it's hard to kind of remember specific things that aren't on the blog but are in the book, or vice versa.
Right. Right. Now, sorry to put you on the spot.
No,
Tell
I'm getting
me,
something to
well,
come to
here,
mind.
give this up. Give this up. What
Okay.
is your number one net? I mean, how do you? what is your number one secret for networking? Because you're really strong at networking with other fitness professionals, and
Right.
how do you get someone to send you patients? I mean, what's your
So,
what's your trick?
um, I really, and this is something I've mentioned before, but I really try to make it about the person or the people I'm meeting with. Um, I think the worst thing you can do, I, worst thing you can do is just talk about yourself
Yep.
during an entire conversation, and that's not anything. That's not like super new or groundbreaking information. But what I like to do in those situations is first of all go into it with a certain mindset of truly, obviously you wouldn't be there if you didn't need something, right?
Right.
Um, but as much as possible, I really try to go in there thinking not about myself, but thinking I am going to be a connector for somebody tonight that is going to change their business in their life. I am going to provide some sort of information for someone that's going to be huge for them. And I make that my goal.
Right.
My goal is not to score patients in the moment or, gain referral sources. My goal literally I hammer it in my mind. I'm going in here to help people, and it sounds funny, but the more you repeat it, the more you try to keep that at the forefront of your mind, you force that on yourself, basically, the more natural it becomes. And that's the way you're thinking when you're talking to people.
Hmm.
When they're telling you about their business, you're not thinking, okay, how can I maybe, mention that I'm really good with my hands, can
Right.
knees really good, or, you're not thinking that way. You're thinking, okay, this guy who's in construction is like, oh, my buddy runs one of the big gutter companies here in town. And then so like in the next break, it's like, hey, do you ever have a need, for someone who can do a great job on gutters, at a good price? And they're like, yeah, or no, okay, well, what about, how do you sell your houses? I've got the best real estate agent. So I'm just finding ways to help them out.
Yeah, that was
And
a great question. Do you ever have a need? Because that puts it all on them. That's really awesome.
right, yeah, some people say, well, what do you, I think that one's kind of overused, to be honest. And I think that, like, it's like a lot of times when people learn something in a book or online, and it kind of gets widespread, and then like everywhere, every networking you go to, someone's like, I get five people ask me like, so, what are you struggling with, or what do you need, or, and I'm
Uh-huh.
like, that's why I like to frame it like a specific question about a specific thing based about their business and what they just talked about, as
Right.
opposed to like this global, well, what are you looking for right now? How can I help you? It's a lot more genuine, and it truly is. It shows them that you were actually listening to what they were just talking about.
Right.
And so if you're constantly keeping that in mind and thinking about how you can connect people and help people out, man, it just comes back. You don't even have to worry about it. And they ask you about your thing. Of course, you do need a canned, 30-second or less kind of speech, not speech, but a few lines of information about what you do. For me, it's something along the lines of, I have a physical therapy practice here in town where I spend a full hour one-on-one with each patient. I specialize in manual therapy or hands-on therapy. So between that full hour and what I can do with my hands, I tend to get people better a whole lot faster than if they're going to like a traditional practice where PTs are seeing multiple patients an hour. And I
Hmm.
kind of leave it at that, and let there be a pause. And if they follow up with questions, I'll answer their questions, but pretty quickly I'm going to turn it back to them.
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to get them talking about themselves again. And so that's kind of how I go about networking, and just kind of natural with people and talking anyhow. So it's
Uh-huh.
not super hard, but I think going in with that mindset is huge. Even if it's not the first thing you like to do is going into those situations. If you go in with that mindset and that approach, you're gonna see success.
Right. That's awesome. Um, yeah, that's really great. It's always intimidating to head into this kind of networking event where you don't know anyone, you don't know what people are doing, and then the first thing someone does is come over and tries to sell you their product. And
Right.
then it's just like, I'm not here to buy your product.
Right.
I'm
Yeah.
here to like learn about you. Give me the opportunity to, to learn about you or, help
Right.
or just, be here rather than, purchase what you have. And
Right.
that's always turned me off.
I think
Um,
just to add to that, something you just said was those things are often really intimidating because most people go into them thinking, "Ooh, am I gonna be successful with this? Is this 2 hours of my time gonna pay off? You know?"
mhm.
And that is just anxiety producing in and of itself, right? So you go in with this idea of like, I need to get something out of this or it's a waste of time. And you have this anxious kind of vibe about you, as opposed to if you're just going like, hey, I'm going to go help some people today.
Yeah,
And you've got that idea and that vibe about you, then it's easy to be successful at that. You can always connect people or do something positive for somebody. That's easy. So you go into it knowing you're going to be successful, you're relaxed, and you just, I think, naturally attract people with that vibe.
right. Awesome. Awesome. So, Jared, tell me about your podcast. Like, when did you start? When did you start, and kind of what was the impetus to starting that? And
So started it earlier this year, earlier in 2014. Um, just published, I think, so got a few like in the
yeah,
pipeline, yours included. I think I'm up to 13 published now, and so I started it because uh, going back to something that you and I talk about a lot, um, with each other and online with our readers and followers, is mindset. And I started it because I realized that one of the biggest hurdles for so many people in looking at and considering the cash-based model as a possibility is just realizing that it's actually being done by a lot of practices out there successfully. Um, and so it's I just decided that, well, first of all, the idea was, okay, how can I make it known how big this is becoming, how many people are having successes with it? Well, the easiest way to do that is to interview people who are doing it, right?
hmm
And I did plenty of interviews on the blog up to that point, not a ton, but some. And there's just something that isn't there in terms of a text interview, as
right,
just writing an email and they answer questions, and those have a place, but being able to hear an answer and then immediately say, wait, what do you mean by that? Or give me two tactics on how you execute that, what you just said. So I just knew that audio or audiovisual was going to be the way to go on that. Podcasts, more and more people are opening up to them as kind of a form of information. With the audiovisual component, if you want to watch it as well, you can't be running or driving.
right,
So, and I'm huge on podcasts for when I'm driving. I almost never even listen to the radio or the news or anything. I'm just listening to business podcasts. And so I decided, okay, I'm going to do a podcast, and I'll do some shows where it's just me talking about stuff that I've done, but the main focus is going to be bringing other people who've had success in the model to the show. And because every practice is different, you've got solo practices, you've got practices that have started cash based and added PTs, you've got those that were big insurance practices that transitioned. There's so many different ways to slice this total kind of out of network model practice that I just felt like if I could bring a lot of these types of people to the show and give great content, it would not only help people execute, but just help people realize that this is possible. And also, if in many cases, unless you are running like a huge hospital chain with enormous bargaining power, you're going to have a really hard time 20 years from now making the profit margins work as reimbursements get worse and worse.
right.
There's no denying that trend, and there's no denying the math in terms of what's happening with money coming in and going out of Medicare and Social Security. And so I just feel like we're entering a storm, and it's important that people like you and I and Wendell and hopefully others join us in getting the content and the word out on how this works in many different scenarios,
Yeah.
so that as many of our colleagues as possible don't have to, go bankrupt or change, go to work for someone else or whatever, so that people can really continue to do what they love and not like dread the day because it's going to be a bunch of stupid paperwork and fights with insurance companies,
Right.
really give what they want to patients.
Yeah. What's the number one benefit to Jared Carter for operating a cash-based practice? I mean, what are the things you get out of it?
Oh, the benefit to me?
Yeah, benefit
Or,
to you as a
oh,
therapist.
just yeah, being able to help people on my terms, choosing to do whatever I feel is going to get them better fastest.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, when you're wondering, well, is this code going to pay as much as that code, or whatever the case may be, it does affect decision making. I mean, we are all to some degree financially motivated. You got to pay the bills, and I don't I don't have to worry about, my decisions are not affected by that. My decisions are all about the patient. And man, that's like just taking the chains off. It's so nice. So
Yeah.
that would be the benefit to me. I probably have much clearer arteries. I'm a happier person. Spending that longer period of time with patients, you get to know them, I think, on a deeper level. And not that you don't in insurance-based practice, that's not what I'm saying, but you can spend a whole hour and really get into deep conversations. It's nice. It's very rewarding.
Yeah. Awesome. What we have a few more minutes, but I got a couple of things I want you to
Sure.
address. Where do you see the future of cash-based physical therapy going, or what do you see 5 years down the road? I know you started to touch on like the whole Affordable Care Health Act and
hmm
how that's going to affect us. What do you see for private private practice, out of network practices, cash-based practices 4 or 5 years down the road?
I think we're going to see more and more practices coming online, starting as cash practices, and more currently insurance-based practices transitioning to some degree out of and at least adding cash-based services because they see the writing on the wall and know that something has to be done to maintain profits. Um, as far as the Affordable Care Act, there are, again, I've written and even done a podcast on that topic of people saying, well, once everyone has insurance, there won't be any cash practices because everyone's gonna have insurance, so there's no more, you're not gonna have cash pay patients, and that makes sense for an insurance-based practice who only sees cash pay patients because those particular patients don't have insurance. Yes,
Right.
those people who would like to use insurance and are forced to get insurance will then use insurance. But you and I both know, and most of the cash practices that we know of, is that 90+% of our patients, mine almost 100% of my patients, have health insurance, and they choose to forego using it up front in order to receive my services or the services of other cash practitioners out there. So you know it's not going to change anything in terms of their mindset because the last 10% of the population now has insurance.
Right.
They're making that choice up front that they're not going to use it, or that they're going to send in their own self claims, or they're just going to go out of network and that practice will bill out a network for them, whatever the case may be. But I think that that's one component where those who are worried about switching to cash shouldn't worry, oh well, it's not going to work because of Affordable Care Act. That's not the case. And in fact, as what we're seeing, I think it's going to help cash practices. And here's why: because as we see already has been happening and will continue to happen, that co-pays are rising and deductibles are rising. And that's actually going to work in the favor of the cash-based practice, the out-of-network practice, because when they have the choice of $50 copay with at the insurance-based practice, where they're going to get 15, 20 minutes at most, maybe with, maybe 30 minutes with a PT, which is kind of rare, I think. But, a small amount of time with a PT, a bunch of modalities, hanging out with a tech, counting their repetitions,
Mm-hmm.
$50 for that. 45 to 60 minutes one-on-one with a doctor of physical therapy who specializes in XYZ that they need. And that costs them 100 or 150, somewhere in that range.
Uh-oh.
Using the insurance base.
Oh, your volume just popped out. Oh no. I didn't touch anything. All right, let's see.
Okay, I think we're back on.
Okay.
Sorry about that, guys. What happened was I have in my my nonstop chase for efficiency, I have a voice recognition system, drag and dictate, on my phone, and sometimes it comes on and starts to do stuff, and so it just muted me. So I'll just go back. But basically, as copays go higher, the jump from choosing between, what would be considered probably a lower value service, not as much one-on-one time and attention, to that higher value cash-based service for, maybe $50 more, but you're going to end up probably seeing them a lot less sessions, less time away from work. The jump becomes smaller and smaller, right?
Oh, and people have to meet their in-network deductible too.
Exactly, and that was the next point, is that as the deductibles go up, you're paying that first 1,000 or 5,000 out of pocket anyway. So
Right.
really, the trends I'm seeing are going to be very positive towards this out of network cash based model, and so I'm actually quite optimistic about those who are making the decision to go in that direction.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're about out of time, Jared. Is there anything else that you have to add, or like, suggestion for anyone who's considering and kind of joining us in this model of practice?
I probably alluded to it just now, but just know that this is a viable model. A lot of people are doing it. A lot of practices are transitioning into it. And I'm not saying that everyone needs to do that. And I think, there will always be a much higher percentage of insurance-based practices. But I do think that more and more we're going to see that if you don't add revenue to your practice that is not based, if you don't add revenue sources that are not tied to a third party payer, it's going to get pretty hairy in the future. It's going to get tight, if it's not already. And so I would just encourage you to start looking into options of adding these cash-based services, whether it's PT services or wellness or fitness or whatever, but adding some other revenue services, and knowing that a lot of practices are doing it, a lot of having success with it. You can check out my podcast. Most of those are interviews of people having success in this model. And so that's what I would leave you with.
Awesome. And can you remind us, where can we find you online? How do people connect with you?
Yeah, so if you go to my website, drjarodcarter.com, DRJARODCARTER, drjarodcarter.com. All the podcasts are there, so you can click there to listen to it. You can go to iTunes and then just search for my name and the Cash-Based Practice Podcast. So those are two ways to find the content that I produce. And I'm obviously on social media, Twitter, Dr. Jarod Carter, and find me on Facebook easily. I interact with people on all the different platforms.
Awesome. Well, Jared, thank you so much. On behalf of everyone listening, thank you. And you've shared some incredibly valuable information,
Thank
and
you.
hopefully validated to other people what's already kind of in their heart and where they're thinking they need to go. Because I know it's been incredibly helpful to me to have met someone like you, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, and connected with that. So thank you very much.
Hey, thanks for having me. I hope this isn't the last time, and I look forward to having you on my podcast again as well. So thanks so much for having me.
You're welcome. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. Thank you, everyone. Tune in next time. Have a great day.